The Bipartisan Commission is a group of former senators, cabinet officers, and other experts, obviously from both parties, who have expertise and interest in biosecurity. And they develop and issue policy recommendations to the government. President Kennedy started a major decade-long ambitious program to land on the moon before the end of the 1960s. In essence, that was a resource commitment to accomplish a big goal. We didn't know everything we needed to know to be able to do that at the time the commitment was made, but we figured that out along the way. And so a lot of people, many of us believe that it's possible to prevent future pandemics like COVID, that is airtight, hard stop, never again, if we put our minds to it and make a commitment at the same level that we made, that President Kennedy made for the Apollo program, that we seriously commit to doing it, and we believe that we can get it done. Because of my interest in technology development for biosecurity, I got recruited by the government to do a variety of tasks that ended up being policy oriented. So in 2011, I was recruited by the Department of Homeland Security to design an architecture to protect the entire nation from a biosecurity threat, just parts and pieces of the overall architecture and how it all fit together. Subsequent to that, I was recruited in the 2011 to 2016 period to be an advisor to the Secretary of Health and Human Services on matters of biosecurity. When the Bipartisan Commission got started to tackle the problem of preventing future pandemics with the Apollo concept, people knew of me and I was recruited back to assist in that. My role with the commission was to work with about 9 or 10 others who have expertise in the space. We brainstormed a whole big bunch of ideas. We thought about all different technological solutions. We thought about how they'd all fit together. And then we interviewed people who knew a lot of things. We conducted dozens and dozens of interviews of experts from government, from industry, from academics, from private foundations, and synthesized all that input and came up with a set of recommendations and a set of technologies that we should invest in. We presented all that to the commission staff. They organized it into a report. The big ticket recommendations were, first, to implement the recommendations that the Bipartisan Commission had made in 2015 that weren't yet implemented. A lot of this, quite a bit of the thinking had already been done. But then next, to produce an actual national biodefense science and technology strategy, to have a national plan that people would create and buy into. And then next, to fund it with a cross-cutting budget across all of the different agencies that would be engaged in that, appropriating the appropriate amount of money. The fourth component was to make the appropriation be a multi-year event. So, it's a problem doing a big project over a span of time if every year you have to fight for the budget over and over again, and the winds of people's opinions change, and then it's not funded. And to do anything big, you really need to issue multi-year appropriations to get some things done. Following those big 4 recommendations, there were 15 specific technology development and integration strategies. And I won't go over them all, but things like develop very broad surveillance technology for newly emerging pathogens. Develop ways to have at-home point-of-person diagnostics. You order something from Amazon, a little kit comes, you test yourself in the privacy of your home. Cheap, easy. Next, put together a national public health data system, integrate the information management between federal, state, counties, and so forth, and have a computer system to talk to one another so we understand what's going on. And then therapeutics. Come up with ways to make very broad spectrum new therapeutics that will work against viruses that we've not yet seen, and strategies to enable therapeutics to be at the ready when something new appears. That's a particularly ambitious goal at the list, and challenging. When the pandemic started, a lot of the things that we had talked about and thought would be good ideas never got implemented. And so I sat down and wrote an opinion essay and published it in Scientific American. And I think overall, for pandemic preparation, we need to have personal protective gear, we need to have ventilators and all that. But in my opinion, that's preparation for failure. To me, preparation for success is preparing for pandemics the same way we prepare for fires, right? If you think about it, fire prevention, there's infrastructure in buildings to deal with it. We have little drills, we have little armies of people who quickly respond. We have a network of alerts. And in California, where I live in particular, catastrophic forest fires are a major issue. So my thesis is we really need to move the center of gravity of our prevention strategy towards snuffing out brush fires before they turn into raging forest fires. Again, with the metaphor, if you can stomp out a brush fire quickly before it becomes affecting the big forest, and then once the forest is on fire, things get out of control, it's going to run its course, and that's pretty much is what's happening with the pandemic. So the way to do that is to have the right kind of surveillance in the right place. I would have it such that there's next-gen sequencing technology in most hospitals around the country. When people present with an acute respiratory disorder, every time people will get a specimen taken, and that afternoon it will be subjected to real-time next-generation sequencing all over the nation. Then the sequences will be informatically matched against databases to find out if it's things that we know are not an issue. But if there were anything unusual that popped up by homology to existing things we know that was a public health concern, that would be monitored in real time at the CDC. There'd be a center there where there would be monitoring of everything that's going on from a respiratory infection perspective across the nation, with very well trained people who know what to worry about and what not to worry about, what you can put aside and what you really have to send a SWAT team of people out. And that's the third component. The third component is a SWAT team of public health people who can immediately snuff out the problem, isolate the people, quarantine, do subsequent testing. And so your lockdowns, if you will, would be extremely narrow, extremely targeted, and with the premise that if you stop the spread of disease very early on, you'll be able to do exactly what you could do when you could stomp out a brush fire before it becomes a raging forest fire. So that's kind of the gist of the thesis that I published, and it's one of the components of the Bipartisan Commission recommendation, amongst many other good ideas that other people have had. The American people and the United States government built railroads. We built the Hoover Dam. We built the interstate highway system. We put a man on the moon. We built the University of California system of higher education. We put GPS satellites. No one seems to think big or bold anymore. And I think everyone can agree that pandemics are bad. For those who don't know it, there will be more. Historically, there have been pandemics on a regular basis. It's not a once in a century event. It'll happen much more often with all the mass traveling that people are doing all across the country, with climate change, which perturbing the forests, with people interacting more with animals. There's just way more opportunity for pandemic after pandemic to emerge. So it will happen again. Everybody that knows anything understands that. To put in place something like the Apollo program, it would cost tens of billions of dollars. So what? That's what it costs to build a couple of aircraft carriers, right? When all is said and done, the COVID pandemic is going to cost tens of trillions of dollars, 1,000 times more. To me, it's common sense if people believe that we're able to put together a package of technologies, policies, and strategies to prevent this from ever happening again. To me, it's a common sense no-brainer that we got to go do it.